In this lesson, we talk about organizing the Program.cs file for maximum readability. The objectives for this lesson are to refactor the Program.cs file by eliminating hard-coded strings using constants. We're going to create some classes with extension methods into which we can move some of the code from Program.cs. And we're going to keep that Program.cs file small and readable. Let's start out by creating a constants class. Right mouse click on the AdventureWorks API and add a new folder called Constant Classes. Then right mouse click on that folder and add a new class called AdvWorks API Constants. You will find a lot of use for having a constants class. Right now, we're just going to add the one which is our cores policy. If you remember in the Program.cs, we had a hard-coded AdventureWorks cores API policy that you see right here on line 31. So let's go up and let's add a using statement to our constant classes so that we can then replace this with our AdventureWorks API.constants.cores policy. So we'll replace that one, and we'll come down here to where we then did the use cores, and we'll substitute that as well. Now you'll find a lot of other things you can use for the constants. So things like even the development error and the production error there on lines 88 and 91. If you are going to be referencing the AdventureWorks API section a lot, you see it here on line 20, and you see it again here on line 24. So that might be something else that you might put into this constants class. A great feature of .NET is called extension methods. Now these are methods that we can add to existing classes, and the great thing is we don't need to inherit from that class. We don't need to have access to the source code. These extension methods are static, and we create them in a static class, and then we use this, and then whatever the class name is, as the first parameter of the class that we are extending. Let's take a look at creating a service extension class. When you look at Program.cs, you see things like add cores here on lines 30 through 40. You see things like the use Serilog on 43 to 54. Again, these are the types of things that it would be nice to put these somewhere else other than the Program.cs. So right mouse click on the project and add a new folder that we're going to call extension classes. We'll then right mouse click on that and we'll add a class called service extensions. And inside of here, we are going to extend that services collection. And we know this because if you look on line 7 here, you see this iService collection, and then I've given it the variable name services here. So service collection, if we go back to Program.cs and we hover over builder.services, you see it is of the type iService collection. So this is going to allow us to add another method like add cores. We're going to actually call it configure cores. And then we're going to take that code that we have there in Program.cs and we're going to move it inside of here. And then we will actually return the result of this, which is again the iService collection. And that's something that you should always do. That way you can still add more things and chain method calls together. So all we're doing is we're taking this out of the Program.cs and we're moving it out into a separate class. So now back in the Program.cs, we can remove all of these lines here and we can replace it with simply this, builder.services.configure cores. So it still reads very nice, like you know what we're doing, but the benefit is we've now taken that code and moved it somewhere else, so things are just a little bit more readable. Let's add another extension class. This one will be for the MVC builder, and we'll move our JSON configuration into this class. So right mouse click on extension classes and let's add another class, this one called MVC Builder Extensions. And into this class, we're going to add our configure JSON options. So you can see this one extends the IMVC builder. That's that builder variable that we use. And that's again an interface. And then here is our configure JSON options that we did before, and I even left in the XML serializer formatters. You could obviously move that to a separate one if you wanted. Once you have that, of course, then what we can do now back in the Program.cs again, so we can locate that code, and we can replace it now with just, again, a nice single line. Again, I still like having my comments in there because that to me just helps people understand what's going on. Let's do another one, which will be the host extension class, and this one is where we can then configure Serilog. Right mouse click on extension classes, let's add a new class called host extensions. And this one is going to extend that iHost builder. And this one is our configure Serilog. And you can see then that I took the code from Program.cs and I moved it into here. So that way, again, what we can do is replace all those lines of code here with just some simpler code. So the whole idea here is we're just giving us some nice organization, right? Not only to the code, we're breaking things out to these small little modules, but we're also then really just giving ourselves a really nice readable Program.cs. Let's now create a web application builder extension class, and we'll move that code where we are configuring the global settings, reading in the AdventureWorks API section in our JSON file, and we'll move that off into this class. Right mouse click on extension classes, and let's add a class called Web Application Builder Extensions. Replace the code in here. So we're creating a public static class again and a static method that's going to extend the web application builder. And then we're taking those lines of code that we did in the Program.cs where we were reading in those sections and configuring them and all of that, and we're now putting it into here. So once again, we can go over to Program.cs, locate all of these lines of code here, and replace them with a much simpler version. So far in this class, we've only created one repository class, that's that product repository. But you can imagine how you would have many of these. If you have a large database with a number of tables, you're going to have a lot of these to create. So let's go to that service extensions class and create a method where we then create our repositories. Open up service extensions, and let's go ahead and add a new method here called add repository classes. And it's inside of here that will do the services.addScoped on the product repository. And like I said, you would probably have many of them like a customer, employee, all sorts of different repositories you would create in here. Then back in Program.cs, again, you can replace that code. So again, we have just a very nice set of one-line methods that configure our running services. So look at this. Now, if we look at this, boy, we've gotten a lot less code in here now, and it's all very readable. You can now come up here and right mouse click and say remove and sort usings. And now we've even got it less code. You should always do a build. Make sure everything still works. And then after you do the build, you should run and you should test out many of these different API endpoints just to make sure everything is still working like you'd expect. So here you can see that this one is working, and I guarantee you if we run the others, they are all working just fine. In this lesson, we learned that extension classes are really helpful for organizing code. We created a few extension classes. We refactored the code in Program.cs to make it much more readable. Coming up next, securing web APIs with JSON Web Tokens.